Did you know that the Gardener's Workshop offers online courses? Whether you're a gardener or a flower farmer, we cover it all, allowing you to increase your skills at your own pace. So check out our full list of courses today at thegardenersworkshop.com. The Gardener's Workshop, turning all thumbs green. Hey everyone, welcome to the Field and Garden Podcast. I'm Jessie from the Gardener's Workshop. Today, I'm excited to bring you a special episode, one that originally aired on the Dirt on Flowers podcast. Lisa joined their host to talk about cool flowers, those hardy early season bloomers that have changed the game for so many of us growers. If you're wondering how to extend your season, increase your sales, or just get a better handle on fall planting, this conversation is for you. So thanks to Shannon and Lindsay of the Dirt on Flowers for generously allowing us to share this content with our community here at Field and Garden. So let's jump in.
I'm Lindsay with Wild Root Flower Company.
And I'm Shannon from Bloom Hill Farm. Over the last 6 years, we've leaned on each other as we grew our farms into the profitable six-figure farms they are today.
We want you to join us each week as we have real, honest conversations about life and business. And we promise you'll leave feeling inspired and your farming toolbox will be filled with actionable strategies you can implement at any stage in your business.
Learn from our mistakes as we talk business, marketing, and growing techniques to help you create the farm of your dreams.
So let's roll up our sleeves
and get the dirt on flowers. Happy Friday, dirtbags. Welcome to another episode of the Dirt on Flowers. Today we are all in for a treat. We are talking about cool flowers today. And I know Lindsay and I have talked about this on and off of the podcast, but we're going big this episode. And we actually have the cool flowers queen herself, Lisa Mason Ziegler. If you love flower farming and don't know who Lisa is, like, where have you been? She is a pioneer in the world of cut flower farming, and she started her farm in 1998 and has been going strong since. I know that her book, Cool Flowers, was a staple for Judd and I when we first started farming. Lindsay had mentioned earlier that this was the first book that she bought and one of ours too. So it's been really transformational in a lot of people's farms, and she's done a lot of good work. So she began her journey flower farming by just transforming an acre in a city lot into a flourishing and high production flower farm. Now she's a leader in our industry, and she's always sharing. I love following her on social, and she's always sharing practical tips, fun and sustainable growing techniques to both new growers and seasoned growers too. So on top of all of this, she's the owner of the Gardener's Workshop, where she truly has dedicated a lot of her life and her work to offering educational resources and teaching and coaching other flower farmers. So we've all benefited a lot from her expertise. So Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to be here with you ladies.
Thank you.
It's been one of those things where Shannon and I have been doing a few more interviews recently, and I'm filled with so much gratitude. Like every time we get to talk to people in our industry that we've just respected and known for so long. So grateful for you to be here. I'm excited to chat with you today. So it's been surreal.
My pleasure, for real.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, as far as if you just tell us about your journey, because I know I told you before, but your book was one of the first books that I bought and read, and it made a lot of sense to me. It made it very simple, but just your farming journey also was so interesting because you did grow in a city lot, and I think that's been so inspiring to so many people that feel like I don't have this air quote big farm. So like, tell us a little bit about your journey in flower farming.
Sure. So little did I know that my journey was actually kind of like Mythbuster after Mythbuster. I was barely a gardener when I met this guy, and he came with this little piece of land in the middle of the city. And, they say that I married him for his garden and dowry, but and that was just the bonus, right? So his lot was actually 2 city lots, and that just really allowed me to pursue. Shortly after I met him, I read the book by Lynn Basinski, The Flower Farmer, and I was just so inspired. It's like I was just getting into gardening. You know how when you first discover it, you're like crazy to grow stuff. It's like gardeners gone wild. You go to the store and buy 10 times more plants than you need. Well, I was kind of in that mode with gardening when I found her book. And I just decided that I wasn't going to pay attention to the fact that I live in the middle of the city wasn't really a farmer, had never been to a farm actually, and that I was just going to jump in head first. And I
Mhm.
literally followed some guidelines in her book. Then our entire property was 1.17 acres, and that included our home and a couple of outbuildings. And that's what I actually farmed on, 2 quarter-acre gardens for the first decade of my flower farm. And because I was a small space gardener, I quickly learned that planting annuals was the jam for me because
Mhm.
I didn't do that at first. I started planting perennials and woodies, and all of a sudden I was totally out of room. But
Mhm.
they only bloomed for a short window of time. They needed as much maintenance, much to most people's surprise. They need as much maintenance as they think annuals need. And so that just kind of flipped my journey, and I was a success out of the gate. I pursued, stalked, they would call it today, a local florist, the one that Lynn Bazinski's book said is the best candidate, the high volume, upscale flower shop, the person that would know
Mhm.
what to do with my stuff. And, as they say, the rest is kind of history. And then I started taking, 30 buckets of gorgeous flowers to the market every week. And then people start asking you, how are you doing that? I started
Mhm.
teaching, found that that is my most passionate, strong gift is teaching the simplicity. I'm a high functioning dyslexic, and that dyslexics seem to make things very simple, cut and dry. That's how we need it. And that's
Mhm.
typically how I teach and write. And that just kind of launched me on to becoming an author, online course producer. And throughout that time, so my farm was 1.17 acres. So when I say I'm surrounded in the city, there's 200,000 residents living right outside my fence. But
Wow.
one side of me actually still bordered this 40-acre horse boarding farm. And I never, ever dreamed, for a lot of legal reasons, that we would ever be able to purchase a piece of that. Well, in fact, that door opened about 10 years into farming, and we were able, land in the city is incredibly expensive. We
Mhm.
were able to afford to buy like an acre and a half more that adjoined my property. That just doesn't happen in the city,
Yeah.
So my little farm just blew into now 2 and 3/4 acres, which allowed me to go into what we call the high production years, when we were producing 10 to 15,000 stems a week, selling to all these florists, all these supermarkets, going to markets, as well as developing our members only market on my farm. Because, when you're in the city, you have a lot more rules to follow. And I just found ways to do that. And we loved high production. I look back now and have no idea how we did it. We just did nothing but start seeds, plant flowers, cut flowers, sell flowers, deliver
Mhm.
flowers. And it was all really good. And then about 5 years ago, I started to take my foot off of that pedal of production. And then I actually stopped selling flowers 3 years ago. And I'm strictly an educator and equipper. I provide what people need to actually do it. And that's where I find myself today. And it's good. I really love living in my farm. And because the other thing about the city is I can have no structures. I've done everything without any hoop or greenhouses,
Yeah.
which I'm really grateful for today because I don't have stuff to actually get rid of in that way,
Yeah.
you know? So that's kind of where
Mhm.
I am. And it's really, I just love empowering other people to follow the path that I did, even when you think you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're always talking about, like, grit and resilience, like, what makes somebody successful in flower farming, and when I listen to your story, I'm like, literally nothing but grit and resilience, not the
Mm.
ideal scenario. Growing space, city limit restrictions, being dyslexic and feeling that, having to stalk your local florist. We always say, be the squeaky wheel for yourself, all of those things. And I think, when we're interacting even with, like, our listeners in our group, it's just the resilience is like those are obstacles that you're going to have to overcome, and that things, all of it, the success isn't just going to come to you because you said you're going to start a flower farm. Like, you have to go get it. And I hear
Mhm.
that in your story so much.
And, as an encouragement, particularly to parents that have dyslexic children, that is the strongest characteristic of dyslexic people. We're cliff jumpers. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world are dyslexic. And it's because we can just get kicked in the teeth today, and tomorrow we think, well, okay, let's do it again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We just keep coming back. And that is undoubtedly what made me successful.
Mhm.
Even being married to a man that was an entrepreneur. I mean, I cried, laid in the floor. I quit thousands of times during my journey,
Mhm.
literally thousands of times. And I can't say enough about, dyslexic people just haven't found their jam yet if they haven't exploited it to its best ability, which I have. But also picking your mate. I mean, my
Mhm.
husband at the breakfast table every morning, pretty much I get a pep talk of some way, and that's what's allowed me to build. I by far do not have an empire, but I feel like I have an empire.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
feel like I've just done a lot of different things, and it's because of those two pieces, which are nothing to do with flower farming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But look what it let me do,
Yeah.
everything's built
Mhm.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we hear people sometimes like, "Oh, I only have this much to grow on,"
Right.
or
Hmm.
they look at it through the lens of like limitations and like I almost say like victim mindset, right? Like this, like I only have this, and a lot of times I think what's so cool about what you did too, Lisa, is just that like that actually is a spin. That's a positive. It
Yeah.
teaches you how to grow more efficiently and learn succession planting, have less waste. And I had somebody to our farm recently and they like made the comment about like it being much smaller than they thought. And I'm like, that's intentional. Like
Yeah.
it is like I am always trying to cut down on yes, I've done the sprawling out and the big and now I'm like, okay, how do I like scale this back in? And I feel like if I had those boundary walls of space of only this much, it's like I think I could have done probably the same thing on less because you would still figure it out.
I think that we all think bigger is better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's drilled into us. And I can tell you after teaching thousands of students in flower farming school, who are the people that we see succeed the most? Those people that have the limitations of small space
Mhm.
because they can't and funds. It's like it's the people like where I am. I'm 64. People at my age oftentimes have a lot of disposable income. They launch into flower farming. They buy hoop houses out of the
Yeah.
gate. They buy a
Yeah.
tractor and before they even know what they're doing, right? And I really feel like so many great potential professional flower growers are lost because we cannibalize ourselves
Mhm.
because we do want to go that way. And you're exactly right that being limited makes lemonade out of lemons, which is truly the most sustainable long haul person that we see succeed.
Mhm.
And it's when you have too much that you just fall in and never come out is what
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
So I agree with you completely.
Yeah. We see a lot of times where we say, what's the plan for it? Not just like throwing up hoop houses because they have the money to do it, or it's my first year growing and you've got all these tunnels and maybe that works, but I'm always like, we have to focus on there's so many things about growing a business, as you know, the marketing side and the business and the accounting, and you're learning kind of all of these things. And
Yeah.
so it's like keeping it all small in the beginning, even though we want to be much bigger, it's like that slower progression of it. It's like we always say like, oh, just have patience, have
Yeah.
patience for the process. And there is something about those gritty early years before you just jump in because you feel like you need to see something because we saw it on the internet. It's hard. It's hard to say that. I mean, I've shared before, but I remember sitting in a therapist's office and I was first year farming. I talked about wanting to quit my job. And she was saying, I was still working another job, trying to get the farm going. And she was like, most people, it's really kind of like 4 to 5 years, and I remember just being like, all right, yeah, cool. Not me, but it's,
Right.
like, that's it's for most people, but it was, and it's like that patience for that whole process, I think just comes from is part of learning. So, and I love hearing your story too, how you've switched from what you were doing because I'm also in the spot. I'm going to be 43 this year. I've been in horticulture. I went to OSU for horticulture and I've been in ag since I was 16. And so I feel this just like I feel things shifting for me in my life in a way that I just don't know what that is in that direction. And so it's like it's also scary to like you're
Yes.
saying, to cut things back. And it's not something that I naturally want to do. So not saying that I'm going to quit farming, but I don't know what it looks like for me. So it's like, it's always inspiring to see how people that have been in our industry continue to navigate that and change. So,
Yeah, I think that is having flexibility really is a great characteristic to bring to any small business owner because, as you not only get older, things change for me when they developed that farm next to me. It now has 90 houses on it, right?
wow.
And when I knew that was coming, I thought, I can't just flower farm anymore. I've got to find another outlet because I can't watch them do that out here and destroy the land, as well as I now have second story houses right up against my farm right there. And they can stand upstairs in their bedrooms and watch us. Not everybody thinks farming is cool. I mean, it's like, so I had like all these watchers, which really pushed me to move on to more education. So, we just find every year is different. Don't say never, and you never know. We're building a solid flower farming knowledge base. Will lead you what you can build on that.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about cool flowers today, but what inspired you to dive into the hardy annuals, cool flowers, and kind of eventually obviously write your book? But what took you on that path?
Sure. So I read that book I mentioned earlier, Lynn Basinski's The Flower Farmer, during the summer of, I think it was 1998, like right about now. Well, what happens when you read a book and discover your dream of your life? You're pumped, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was really kind of too late to plant most warm season annuals. And she had mentioned in a couple of places, she was talking about snapdragons and Sweet William, that she's in Kansas, that they could, for some people, winter over. And I thought, that's an interesting concept. So I went back to the book and read more about that. And so I actually launched my first working flower farming garden with rocket snaps, a Sweet William that I cannot remember the name of. We don't have it anymore. Indian summer rudbeckia and sweet peas. Those were the 4 plants that I planted in the fall, the very first year. And they were a huge success. The next May, I mean, I was just loaded with amazing flowers, and that lit me on fire, and that opened the door that I still didn't know enough to know that, oh, these are cool season hardy annuals, and everybody else is literally usually only growing warm season annuals. But I knew that I wanted to plant zinnias and coxcomb and all those things. So it kind of evolved. I struggled for 3 or 4. I never really embraced succession planting like I do now back then because I hadn't figured it out. Because girls, you won't believe this, but we barely had the internet then. Literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I had magazine articles, Lynn's book. I wasn't a member of the ASCFG yet. So, I mean, I was literally out here on my own figuring it out with, I come from my husband's family are big farmers. I was a master gardener, so I had a lot of gardeners giving me advice, and we know how bad that can be
Yeah.
because it's totally different.
not the
That's the
same.
biggest misconception.
Yeah.
Totally different than gardening. And so anyway, that I walked into the first florist with those sweet peas and those big old black-eyed Susans that they had never seen the likes of, and snapdragons to die for, and swept them off their feet. And then he led me on the business part of how to package and charge. He showed me all the invoices from all the wholesalers, right out of the
Nice.
gate, because he wanted me to succeed.
Yeah.
Anyway, that started my journey, and then I just started trying to find out more great flowers I could plant in the fall, and it just opened that door. Hard to learn too, by the way. No information out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Flower Farmer Facebook group is the version of Master Gardener, like a bad Master Gardener advice now. Like the black hole of the Flower Farmer Facebook group. I'm like, I see good information and then I see information. I'm like, no, I can't.
Yeah, it started out with the best of intentions. Back when we were first involved over there was like 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And they were all people with the same goal. And I go over there. Okay, I don't do the dangerous thing of searching my name anymore you know, because it's really scary. But, it doesn't really matter to me because let me tell you where I am today, girls. You can be a troll and comment on my social media and YouTubes and everything else. Guess what? It counts towards my algorithm. No way, people.
Go ahead.
And I feel that way over in the flower farmer group too.
Yeah.
It's like any mention is a good mention.
Yeah.
Means you're doing something right.
The challenge today is to get rid of the noise.
Yeah. There's so
That's
much
really
of it.
true.
And
Mhm.
and overcomplication. I mean, Lindsay and I talk about that all the time. We're like,
Ugh.
I'm like,
the
"What?
amount of
Why are you Why are you netting sunflowers? Stop it." Like,
it's
why what's
exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, we
So half
Yeah.
of what we're
So
doing is letting
it's,
people know. Stop doing
yeah.
that.
And it's just their demise.
Mhm.
And, talk about all the time that the problem is it's so easy to just slide into flower farming business from a gardener position without having any really knowledge base.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Selling is the root of all of that. And our challenge as we try to share with people, we have the resources you need. If you want to become a true professional cut flower grower, the quickest way, the cheapest way, you get educated first before
Mhm.
you start doing all that craziness that people
Yeah.
do.
Mhm.
And, that led me in flower farming school, the very first class, and this was a big, hard decision. It's all about, you know, find it. What are you spending your time doing during the day?
Mhm.
Things that it's not about growing beautiful flowers.
Yeah.
And I was scared that people would buy the course, take that first class and say, holy cow, this isn't what I was looking
Yeah.
for. Like, y'all, this is the ugly frog you need to eat first.
Yeah.
And then we get down to the stuff that inspires you and leads you on. So yeah, I'm there with you. A
Yeah.
lot of bad information out there. Ignorant information, not people being deliberate. They just
Yeah.
don't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into cool flowers. I know there are people here who are going to be listening who I know have heard that phrase but don't really know what it is. So, give us an idea what that concept is. What exactly is it?
Sure. So where I like to introduce people is meet Cool Flowers. Cool Flowers is a concept about how anyone anywhere can grow cool season hardy annuals. The biggest problem that we face is that the horticulture world over the past decades, because of retail customer behavior, just started calling annuals annuals.
Mhm.
And when people hear the word annual, they instantly think of, tomatoes, basil, zinnia, sunflowers, which we know are warm season tender annuals.
Mhm.
They've generalized and just capped the entire group of annuals of what the most popular annuals are, which is warm season. But in fact, there are, for my case, two types of annuals. There's warm season tender annuals, coxcomb, zinnias, cosmos, all that stuff that grows during the heat of summer. Then there's a whole nother family that has fallen off of our radar, which are called cool season hardy annuals. And those are annuals that, yes, typically only live a year, like a warm season annual,
Mhm.
but they have a very different planting time. And their awkward planting time is what has led them to fall off the planet.
Mhm.
When I doing research for cool flowers, I had to go back to books from the 50s to really find any like reference to sweet peas and all these bells of Ireland and all these
Mhm.
great cool season hardy annuals about when they really should be planted. The best book that I have is, I think it was printed in 1950. It's Better Homes and Garden book. It
Mm.
also tells you to put DT in your garden for peace. So take that into,
Yeah.
but that's how old it is. But it talks about, when you should plant larks, when our grandmas planted larkspur
Yeah.
and these different things. And that was really the root of me finding some documentation. So cool season hardy annuals, because of their awkward planting time, yes, it's a little bit more head scratching for you to figure out where you live
Mhm.
when the proper planting windows are for you. And as people, and I hate to say it, when women went to work in the 60s and 70s and stopped having big gardens in homes, when that whole, and TV came into the world, all of these extracurricular activities that were harder just kind of fell by the wayside. And this
Mhm.
group of plants is one of them.
Yeah.
Nurseries stopped offering them. and we just left them alone. We just forgot all about them. And so I didn't discover cool season hardy annuals or cool flowers. I just rekindled a concept that was lost because of the evolution of the way that life goes on and changes.
Mhm.
And so cool season hardy annuals don't just survive cool to cold weather. They thrive in cool to cold weather. And you need to find when you plant them for your garden, because I will tell you, they bloom in the highest demand season, whether you are a gardener or a flower farmer.
Mhm.
It's the earliest spring blooms, right? When everybody's the hungriest. That's why it's the biggest cash crop of the year.
Yeah.
Because everybody is coming out of winter, right?
Mhm.
And so that's the story of how we lost them. And there's a bunch of them. We're still finding. I have Tweedia sitting back here
Oh, I
behind
love
me.
Tweedia.
I didn't even know that Tweedia was a cool flower until about 3 years ago. There's a lot of flowers that they just stopped describing them as cool season hardy annuals.
Yeah.
There's just you just don't know. And I
Mhm.
actually, all three of my books, tell people, like, this is the signs that it's a cool season hardy. The flags you can look for of a plant saying, hey, I'm cool, I'm cool.
Yeah.
And we've been treating it as warm forever,
Mhm.
Yeah. One thing I have to tell you, then I want to ask you a question about another plant. But when our podcast manager reached out to you, we always do like a summary of what we want to talk about. And we said we wanted to talk about cool flowers, but I had to explain she doesn't have a plant background, that they just weren't like awesome, cool flowers, like cool, because
Right.
I was like, I know she's not going to know, but I'm like, I needed to clarify. I'm like, just so you know, this is like, we're talking about a group of flowers. So she was like, okay, great. Thanks. It was like, didn't want you to just be like, hey, we're going to talk about these awesome flowers that you have. But when I worked in the garden center, we called them hardy annuals. We didn't call them cool flowers. We called them hardy annuals. And those were things like you're saying, sweet williams, snapdragons, pansies, the things that we sold early that would go with those bulbs that we kind of forced. So that was like my first introduction to it. But I've had I keep learning too. I didn't know Tweedia was one.
Me either.
Is Salvia Blue Better one that does
Yes.
that?
Mm.
Do you know?
And then to confuse the matter even more, there's plant families of plants like salvia, dianthus, rudbeckias, where there's some perennial varieties.
Perennials.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then there's some hardy annual varieties, and then there's even biennial varieties.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really, and so I understand. That's why I'm constantly teaching about cool flowers, because I will teach until, I'm done, and there'll still be the vast majority of the world has no clue
Yeah.
Mhm.
what to do with them or that they even exist.
Yeah. I think people give up too early. So like Salvia Blue Better was one of them that I was like, man, every time I know this thing grows well. And it was like, I was growing it in the summer. Well, then we switched to like not doing it our first couple successions and then planting it later for fall. And it's like, that was
Beautiful.
it. Like they
Mhm.
it's beautiful and it's huge and it needed it needed a different growing period, So I think it's that
Right.
we always talk about there is no easy button, and trying to figure it out. And that's the thing with even with cool flowers, there's just sometimes they're going to work in certain climates of the
Mhm.
parts of the country. And sometimes they're
Yeah.
not.
And that's the gift of truly. I guess after cool flowers, my big picture of what I do is about succession planting. Most people complicate it so much that they never truly live with a succession planting. And by succession planting and really focusing on bringing, like some of these flowers and planting them at different times, you really like, oh my gosh, that's really what makes it successful. What you thought didn't work, but guess what? We did it here and it really worked. So all those things work together for the greater good.
Yeah.
I think people also have a hard time wrapping their brains around that the planting and seed starting for the next flower season happens when you're in the height of your current flower season. I think and I
Yeah.
know for me that was the hard thing about fall planting, was because I had to start seeds when I was so busy cutting and managing at the highest part of our season too. But it really is, cool flower succession is your first true succession
Yeah.
of the following year. So I think that's a hard thing for people to understand too, or to do when they're struggling to keep it all afloat.
And that's, I know I talk about it, I think in all three of the books. And of course, big time in my courses and my club is the big calendar.
Yeah.
It's like without that big calendar, nothing would have happened on this farm at the right time. Who's thinking of starting, which is a cool flower, cut flower kale right now? That's the
Mhm.
seed that should be. Nobody remembers to start. I didn't. But because, in the heat and exhaustion of the summer, as long as I have my glasses on and the lights turned on in this building, we come out to work, we walk to the calendar and look, it's like, all right, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
We don't put little mundane tasks, but it's like, okay, are there seeds that have to be started? That's the only way. That's the only thing that keeps you on point. That's why I call it the brain of my flower farming business.
Yeah. Sometimes I get really tired of looking at my calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, I guess my biggest bonus of that big, literally big calendar that hangs on the door to this building is that I don't have to be the only one looking at it because
Yeah.
it's not digital.
Mhm.
And that everybody on the farm understands how it works and can help. I mean, Bobo constantly, did you notice, Lisa? We're supposed to be, so
Everybody
yeah,
needs a
I
Bobo
totally, yeah,
to keep them
it's
on
true.
schedule. Yes.
It's true.
So funny.
Okay. Well, let's talk because we're specifically today kind of talking about fall planting. So, this is going to air when people are entering into a time where they should start thinking about fall planting, at least in our zone. We're in zone 6B. But why is fall such an ideal time to plant? What is the benefit of fall planting versus spring planting in your eyes?
Sure. So, in a nutshell, when you fall plant those cool season hardy annuals that survive your winter lowest temperatures, that means that you're planting them 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost. So they're spending that 6 to 8 weeks to become established. Either, if you plant transplants, they're becoming established. However, you would plant seeds of some varieties, and that 6 to 8 weeks gives them the sprouting, growing up period. Then they typically go dormant for
Mhm.
winter, right?
Mhm.
And during that dormancy, the top is dormant, but those roots are setting up housekeeping. That is the real huge benefit of this whole thing is those plants spend all winter just getting ready, getting cozy, revving up. And then the minute the season starts, they're just ready to hit the ground running versus that is the time that most people are just planting those
Yeah.
same
Mhm.
plants. I mean, it makes such good when you think about it. It's like, oh, for sure. That's why fall planted cool season hardy annuals typically grow twice as tall, produce
Yep.
twice as many stems.
Mhm.
They're more disease and pest resistant. They bloom earlier. Plus, they bloom longer into heat and humidity because they're so well established.
Mhm.
I mean, they show down heat and humidity like they give them, say a bad word, they give them the finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they just don't even care what's happening to them because they're so robust. And that's the really big difference. And then I just want to mention, not everybody, we have a lot of students and people up in Alberta, up in, zones 4. And there is a second window of opportunity, even though fall is always the headliner.
Mhm.
That's the one where we all talk about. But the second window of opportunity, which everyone, no matter where you are, can take advantage of, is what we refer to as very early spring. That's 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. And the important thing about that is that even if you can't fall plant, you have to prepare the planting beds in the fall for that timing of planting. Because for us here, we've typically got snow at that time. The ground is either frozen, wet, and you just can't work the soil.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So anyone that's feeling penalized, let me tell you, I have heard some fantastic ways of people up in the north truly exploiting the very early spring opportunity because they can't fall plant. Most of them just have such heavy snow load all winter that, the plants would never survive, of ways to just get this group of plants in as early as possible, far before any warm season stuff can even be thought about. So don't feel penalized if
Mhm.
Yeah.
you live, if you're in zone 4 and 3, you probably aren't going to be fall planting. Not zone 5 has got some, zone 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 have a vast variety.
Yeah. That date you were talking about, that 6 to 8 weeks, before our, first frost and before the last frost. And it's like, that's kind of been a little bit of a moving target too. There's been a couple years where I'm like, I put this stuff in too soon. Stuff got too big. But one year, actually, I got in stock so early. I actually had it for Thanksgiving. So I was like, nice. Well, I learned something about that.
Yeah,
And I was like,
exactly.
it was like, so that was one thing. Then I started, now I fall plant for stock so I can have stock later, in the season when it's not just a spring thing for me. So it was like, that was just kind of a happy accident, but that's, I've kind of learned, I guess, from that mistake. The other thing is the plants, I was always shocked in the beginning, even though I feel really comfortable with perennials. They always look awful. And I have to tell myself and remember, they're fine. The root systems are fine. These plants are meant to do this. And, so it's like when people in our insiders group will just say like, look at these plants. They look awful. I'm like, it's going to be okay. They're going to pull out of it. You're going to be cutting off of those here very soon. And you're going to be very happy. But it's like, it is a little shocking when you see them look, they look awful on top. So
like little frozen popsicles.
yeah.
And
like,
what I
no way
tell
it's coming
people
back.
and what I came to have to understand myself is that stem that you plant that's on the plant or a group of stems is literally just an anchor for the roots to get them through the winter. And then when you see all the, sweet peas are just a great example for us. It is unbelievable. We plant a little vine and that vine looks dead, frozen, like it's a goner. And then at first sign of some warm weather, just multiple shoots come out of the ground around that old dead stem. So yeah, I tell people, do not pull anything out until May.
Yeah.
Let him, you just don't know whether it's dead or not.
Do you trim that stuff up, Lisa?
No. Are you kidding?
You don't trim anything that's off. Like if somebody was like, if that stuff looked bad, you just leave that stuff at like in a high tunnel.
Well, I guess it would depend on what it is. First off, once you go, as y'all know, high production, it's like you just don't have time for that kind of stuff. But maybe on the first harvest cuts or something, if there is, some dead stems or something, we might hit it while we're there. But we routinely don't go out there and do that type of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah. The only thing we still kind of struggle with is Rudbeckia a little bit. Like we still get some, just like, I don't know what it is, but there's like sometimes every year it just sort of, we get spots of it and sort of rots. And so like, I don't know if it's staying too wet or whatever, but yeah, we tend to lose a few of those here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty good. But that seems to be the one every year. I'm like, what's it doing? Just rots off. And then we leave it because like you said, it could still come out, but we usually end up with holes. So.
Right. The cause of death for cool flowers, or the leading cause of death in cool flowers, is wet feet. And we don't realize we have wet feet until we start gardening and farming in the wintertime. Because in the summer months, it's hot. So you get natural evaporation, you get heat that's drying the soil out. And so many of the cool season hardy annuals are very susceptible. And when you have soil that it's not like you have puddles sitting out there, like it's obvious that you have a drainage problem, right? It's just that it usually rains, snows, and ices more frequently during the winter. At least it does for us. And then you don't have the heat component. It's not drying out. And that's just a breeding ground for diseases. And that's what takes out most of these. So I highly recommend greatly raised beds. The more raised beds you can have, the better. Excellent drainage. If you have wet spots on your farm, that is not a good spot for cool flowers. And, with Rudbeckia, I have found for me, because we grow like 9 different Rudbeckias, that slugs really throw down on Rudbeckias through the winter. They can. And then you put that in combination with wet soil. They get really stressed sometimes. But I've just found planting nice sized transplants, not big, but not teeny ones either, has helped us to overcome that. But Rudbeckia, which was a huge cash crop contributor for us, all of them. That's zone 5. I think it's winter hardy too. So everybody should be, because we would have Indians Goldilocks and maybe Indian summer for Mother's Day. when we would fall plant. I mean, just
Wow.
huge
Yeah.
benefit.
What are your Goldilocks is probably my favorite,
Mhm.
and then Sahara is the other one that I really like. Do you have
Just so
favorites?
happen to have them right here. Look at this. My two favorites. I did a show on Meet Cool Flowers last
Mhm.
night, is why these are here. This is Prairie Sun. This is the
Pretty.
bomb.
That's
This
pretty.
Yeah.
is, it's bright. That's
Mhm.
why I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, just love that. And this is Chim Chimney.
Oh, yeah,
Holy
That's
Chimney's
cow.
awesome.
adorable.
Yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't get insect damage because the petals are fluted.
Mhm.
That's
So
cool.
it just allows you to leave it in the garden more frequently. Yeah. So I love them all. I can't pick.
Yeah. What's the harvest stage on them? Because I feel like I quit kind of growing Irish eyes because I feel like it's just never like the heads are kind of floppy or like I don't know. I'm not doing something. Maybe I'm not doing something right with it.
You mean on like Prairie Sun, the lighter colored ones?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I think Irish eyes is the variety that I've tried to
Yeah.
grow.
And so I do like Prairie Sun better than Irish Eyes, just the
Okay.
way they look. But for those light colored ones, when the petals are still with their petals kind of aiming up a little bit on the edges, which means they're still in the opening stage, is when I try to cut them.
Mhm.
If not a little earlier to prevent pest damage, because
Mhm.
they'll get spots really quickly. The darker Rudbeckias, I tend to leave longer because it doesn't show pest damage and they just get more and more easy to hydrate. More
Yeah.
mature they
Mhm.
are. But cutter Rudbeckias, definitely quick dip in the bucket, a hydrator, 2 tablespoons to a gallon. We do that religiously now on the needy flowers, and it totally changes everything. And cutting them first in the morning. So we treat them like basil,
Mhm.
first up to get cut and get indoors because they can. And we strip all foliage. I strip harder than everybody else, which is
Mhm.
probably why my flowers last longer.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's tough. It's hard. But I look at flowers that people leave so much foliage on. It's like, that's why your flowers only last 4 days or 5 days.
Mhm.
It's a fact. And Rudbeckia is definitely one of those.
That's good. That's a good
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of some of the nitty gritty, more planting information. I know that you are doing a 3-part webinar about when to learn how to plant, when to plant your cool flowers. You want to tell everyone a little bit about that?
Sure. So every July, we consider July Cool Flower Month because
Mhm.
this is when we should be getting boots on the
Mhm.
ground, not doing the job for most of us,
Yeah.
but getting ready. So we always do a free webinar run near the end of the month, and it's me walking you through figuring out when you plant cool flowers. We literally fill out a worksheet together. It's a free webinar.
Nice.
And that sign up will be coming out on the 18th of July. And you can sign up and you'll get the worksheet. And then you show up to your live webinar and we literally walk through. I understand how confusing it is.
Mhm.
And, I have killed more cool flowers than most people will ever attempt to grow. So I've been there around the block and we've just kind of figured it out. And so, yeah, we would love to have folks sign up for that webinar. And I think it just clears the air
Mm.
of, okay, step one, I know when I should plant them now.
Mm.
And that is just very specific to where you are. That's what we're helping people through.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest things that people have trouble grasping. I think it's
Yes.
it's like the first obstacle in planting them is figuring out the when so that you can add it to the schedule. So that'll be great.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the other thing that we struggle with, which I also understand, is, there's some cool season hardy annuals that really do best direct sown in the garden. And then there's the vast number of them do best with transplants. And so when I say your planting window, your optimal planting window, then you tweak it to your situation, is 6 to 8 weeks before your first expected historic frost. And so let's just say it's October 1st to mid-October is your window. Then it's like, okay, do I plant seeds then? Or when do
Mhm.
I
Yes.
start the transplants? That optimal planting window is when you are planting out in your garden, either seeds for those that prefer it that way, or
Mhm.
you have a transplant ready to be planted.
Yeah.
Because both methods use that next 6 to 8 weeks to either sprout and grow into a baby plant or to become established before winter sets in and they go dormant.
Mhm.
And that is I bet we get 5 questions a day about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's hard to understand.
Mm-hmm. And it would be the same also for spring. So, and that's that I used to always plant. It used to be in our zone would be St. Patty's Day. So you could go
Right.
out and it was like, that's when you would plant. And then you've got 6 to 8 weeks. And now I'm like, sometimes it's Valentine's Day. But what I got into this year where we just had a lot of snow cover, I couldn't get out and work the ground. And so I really like to do our fall planting. And then I like to do another one in the spring just so that it kind of gives me a little bit of variation. I couldn't do it this year. So stuff got pushed later. It's just one of those things. It was just another, again, learning experience where I was like, should have done that more in the fall.
Well, but you can't do everything all the time,
Yeah. Oh, this
And
is true.
our practice is to really streamline. I mean, I streamline everything is when we prepare cool flower fall beds, we just make extra beds for very early spring.
Yeah.
It's not even like it's a separate day or event that we're actually doing. And then those beds literally just lay empty until very early spring. They're ready and wait.
Smart.
That
Yeah.
helps a lot.
Something that helps me is that I always struggled with, like, I did pretty good getting the transplants, the seeds started, but then it was like keeping these transplants alive, like Shan was saying, when it was super busy, and then stuff I really wasn't getting the best transplants. So last year was the first year I actually bought plugs in. I was getting married last year. I got married Labor Day weekend, and I was like, I know that I already know I'm going to fail at this. So so we ordered plugs in, and we had like the best spring flowers this year because of that. So
nothing wrong with ordering plugs.
No. Yep. So I just decided that's what I'm going to do for fall. We order Lysianthus. We don't order plugs in for anything other than Lysianthus. And so that was just like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. It saves me the labor, the time, the stress, the watering, and we could just show up and plant. So it was a win. For sure.
And the plugs that I would when we were in high production, I don't do it anymore because we don't need the high volume. The plugs that I would order in was always Campanula Champion, very difficult from seed, Trichelium, which is never grown because it is hard to start from seed, and it is an amazing filler. And I would bring those in via plugs. It's just not even worth trying to start those. But planting in a timely time, because then the other challenge, once people know when they're supposed to plant, it's then actually executing it, right? Them in the ground. And the thing I just really want people to focus on and think about is that sometimes for many people that we counsel anyway, the summer that we're headed into right now is where it takes people down. It's the hottest. It's when you have the most hours. But on the other hand, it's when most people's sales are the slowest because they have not set up their business to have summer customers. And so that's a perpetual drag you down, and then they don't ever. So that's why they're always late to cool flowers, because they're overwhelmed, they're tired, they're depressed, they're pouting, they're crying, and I get it because that's why I actually built my business to have tons of summer customers, right? Complete opposite. And I understand that. But what they need to remember is this fall planting, for all those things you can fall plant, is your cash crop for the easiest season of the year to sell, which is spring. Where you're going to have more customers than you know what to do with. And if you don't plant on time, you need to mow your summer garden if that's what it means. If you're not selling, mow that mess down. Get over it. Do better on cool flowers because the numbers will show you the way.
Yeah. How you're saying you built your business around for summer. I will say, like, I've shared this on here before, but summer for us in our market is slower. So what did you do to build your business, you feel like, for summer?
Well, how many times can you harvest 10,000 stems and not sell them?
Yeah.
And try to figure it out, right? So I became we sold to 23 florists, 2 supermarket chains.
Yeah.
2 farmers markets, a members only market, and a bouquet subscription for businesses and for residents, right? So I had a lot of different fingers in the pie. Florists were my bread and butter. Oh no, they were my meat and potato. And I soon learned after selling to them for several years, being that person where they would just order a few things from me. They were not ordering high volume, even though they were high volume florists. And then I learned about standing orders and what that is. I never even knew what that was. I just happened to stand in a flower shop when my customer hung up. And I said, "What was that you were talking about?" She said, "Oh, that I was telling them that I didn't want any marigolds in my standing order box." I said, "What the heck is a standing order box?" She said, "Oh, they send me, a box of $100 worth of flowers automatically every Monday, even if I don't call them. That way I have something to start the week with." And I looked at her and said, "How can I get your standing order?" And that started a huge business. I mean, we had thousands of dollars of standing orders every week because this is where just the whole method of my madness. I never got into blush. I never got into high value crops. I grew the flowers that the flower business people used every single day of their business life.
Yeah.
Sunflowers,
Yeah.
cockcomb, marigolds, zinnias, ageratum. All of the annuals that everybody else feels like is just not even worth their time. That's what we built our whole business around because I sold tons of those every week. So when our zinnias started coming in, all of our customers canceled all their Gerber daisy standing orders because they would rather this, And so even when there are no events, even when people are on vacation, they still have people dying every single day. I sold to 3 florists that did like the most. I live in a really urban, suburban, high party. I'm surrounded in military bases. Washington, D.C., suburbans of Northern Virginia, we're second to them in partying. When you've got a lot of business and military around. And so there was a lot of natural business that was happening that wasn't about these special colors of flowers. And so I just grew the same old staple flowers over and over again, grew top quality, priced them properly, and sold them every single week, So that's how I did that.
Yeah. I hope if people that are listening, I hope you guys are listening to this to this is such an emphasis on like knowing your market and knowing your business and understanding like where you are selling because we're, in a market that I am like I'm very rural, small. And so we're at a farmer's market where they're, peak season for us, there's 5 or 6 people selling flowers. And so you get into this, like there's, figuring out how to move for us beyond the bouquet and, selling workshops and agritourism and other ways to expand to figure out how to fill that void. But for us, we really found the cool flowers and the early season stuff for us has been great because we have the infrastructure to grow it. And that's where we're really making all of the, earlier season. And so I guess I just encourage people to, because Shannon, where she is, she sells to a lot of event florists and the blushes, she can't sell a sunflower to save her tail.
Yeah.
I can. So it's like, this is what's so cool about hearing everybody's different business models and how they've sold and the way their businesses are. And so again, not being discouraged by it, but just accepting what your market is and trying to figure out how to make the most out of it. So
it seems though that a lot of people, how long have we all been doing this? It takes time. You don't just start your business and find your market immediately. You compost a lot of flowers. You have a lot of the tears and the frustrations, but that's the goal is, all right, not what do I want to do? What is available to me? What markets do I have? Right. And that's really what it's all about. And then once you're doing it successfully, then you get to do a little picking and choosing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. With Shannon and I, we want to do an episode on, we have a target market episode, but we really want to talk about like your market and your demographic and how to understand what's going to work. You know what I mean? And like helping people to understand, like, is your market too saturated? What we see a lot of, we get a lot of questions about that too. So we're trying to figure out how we can have an episode to navigate that and give some advice.
And, I believe that the market appears saturated, but it's not saturated, not with professional cut flower growers.
No.
There's a lot of people out there selling cheap old flowers.
Yeah.
I don't have a filter anymore, y'all. It's like I'm 64. I can say what I want, but we counsel people every day. They don't know when to cut their flowers. They're undercutting others. They don't last long. They're not going to be here in 2 or 3 years. But unfortunately, those of us that are doing business suffer because of that. And they are a great problem for the industry. And so, that would
it's
be a
true.
good one.
We do. We hear that. We hear that often from.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have you back on, and then the unfiltered Lisa, and then we can.
We'll let you curse.
We'll all get trolled on the internet afterwards. We'll stay off the Facebook groups. And
oh, what the heck?
Yeah, who cares? Man. Well, is there anything, Lisa? I know we're gonna share with them about the free webinar that you talked. If you have links or anything, we'll be happy to put in our show notes and direct them to that. But did we miss? Is there anything that we've missed that we need to talk about with Cool Flowers before we wrap it up?
Sure. So, I mean, for someone just learning about Cool Flowers, I think the first step is the book Cool Flowers.
Yes.
Because it's pretty simple and easy. It's just, it explains the concept. And then every flower farmer, the next step would be the Cut Flower Handbook book, which is the book I wrote last year, which literally I put every question I answered every single day is in that book about the 3-season cutting garden, growing it outside, what to grow, how to grow it, when to cut it, everything. That's just a great reference tool. And then we have Cool Flowers from Seed to Harvest, which is an online course that is all primarily out in the field demonstration videos about when to cut and just really helping people hone in and perfect. It had lots of frequently asked questions and troubleshooting. So those are just resources that you need. And I understand that it just takes time. I still use the Cool Flower book. Do you know what I mean? It's like when I'm starting seeds, does it get covered with soil or not? You don't have to remember all this mess. You have to have just good go-to resources is what it's all about. And I think, the big picture for me is how to help people become professional cut flower growers. And my method has been to get in with low investment and high return, which is annuals, which is what I feel like the majority of most people coming into this. They're not looking to become some of the industry leaders like Steve and Gretel Adams of Sunny Meadow that are full-time, Jenny Loves, Pamela and Frank Arnowski, people that have built these amazing business models. They're so amazing, but that's not what most people want. Many of them are people that want to add value to their family income and do it with something they really love and enjoy without so much high risk, and to do it in a small space with the least amount of work with the highest return. And a 3-season outdoor cutting garden is really the ticket, in my opinion, and doing it really, really well. And Cool Flowers is, we have people that are actually now just farming and doing Cool Flowers and not even harvesting in the summer. And it just is, they're blowing it up, you know, so they can just really focus on having a great spring when there's the most high demand. I mean, who couldn't sell more Bells of Ireland?
Yeah. Well, listen, I kill my Bells of Ireland. They get these little spots on it. Lisa, I love them, but
Bacteria,
I don't, do I need to be spraying with something on them?
Well, we don't treat with anything. Some years are good and some years are bad. If it rains a lot, you'll get it. That's why they're great to grow in a house. But of course, we don't have a house.
Yeah.
And I would say that 2 out of 3 years, we have great Bells of Ireland. But in 1 year, it's worth trying them every year because they're so high value. And the second they get tall enough to use, we start cutting them. And I usually cut them clean within 7 to 10 days. So before the spots happen.
Okay.
So I understand. And that's just the way we manage it because it's great for bouquet building and in demand to our floral customers. They're just so different than what they get from the
And their
wholesaler.
the bells that they get in are just awful. Like my florists gobble them up whenever they can get them. But I kind of quit growing them because they were getting those spots on them, bacterial spots. So, well, okay, you've re-inspired me to regrow, to start growing them again. Because when they're in a bouquet, they're huge. It's like that time of year that you want something big and bulky, and they just
people love them.
Yeah,
people,
they're so fun.
They're entranced by them. There's no other flower like bells.
Yeah.
And we direct sow those in the fall here for me in 8A up to 7, I think, or 7B. You could do that.
Very cool.
So it's been a pleasure to talk to y'all about Cool
Flowers.
Flowers.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your time with us and stuff. We really do appreciate it. We'll make sure we link all this for everybody below. So, all right, Dirtbags, I hope you loved recording or listening to this recording as much as we did. This has been so fun. So I hope this conversation helps give you the confidence that you need going into your fall planting with Cool Flowers. order the book. I hope you feel inspired. And I think that inspiration, just that little bit of knowledge, gives you the confidence just to try something, even if it's going to fail, but you will not regret investing in yourself in next spring for now. So, and if you have not already, head over to Instagram and follow us at Dirt on Flowers. Make sure you send us a message. Let us know you love this episode and what you learned from it. So our podcast content is created by you. So we love hearing from you each and every week. You guys are seriously the best. And we thank you guys so much for listening each week. We will see you the same time, same place next week.
Hey, it's Jessie again. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into cool flowers and fall planting with Lisa and the wonderful hosts over there at the Dirt on Flowers. If you're ready to take the next step with cool flowers, be sure to check out Lisa's resources. Both her book, Cool Flowers, and the course, Cool Flowers from Seed to Harvest, are designed to help you grow flowers more confidently and successfully. So if you like what you're hearing here on the Field and Garden podcast, we'd love it if you'd tell a friend about us and leave a review for us wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.